This episode is brought to you by Benton Integrative Medicine, a concierge, membership-based medical practice offering direct primary care, functional medicine, hormone and sexual health, and wellness and vitality programs.
At Benton Integrative Medicine, they look beyond symptoms to uncover root cause solutions, helping patients restore balance, energy, and well-being through a comprehensive and personalized approach.
Their team believes in medical freedom, informed choice, and patient autonomy, empowering you to take charge of your health with a trusted partner by your side. Learn more at bentonintegrative.com and discover how integrative care can help you thrive, body, mind, and soul. Our listeners know that the three of us are passionate about exposing the broken systems within our society, revealing how the quest for money and power has corrupted so many of them so that they no longer serve us.
That's right. We talk a lot about our broken medical system, and that includes our broken medical insurance system. We believe that it is time we dismantle the broken systems and work together to rebuild new ones that actually serve us.
And that's why we are excited to share an answer we found as an alternative to your traditional insurance plan that charges you exorbitant monthly payments and deductibles, then asks you to pay even more when you get sick, that controls your medical decisions, including what your physician is allowed to do and prescribe, and that rakes in billions as corporations at our expense.
That's why we love Crowd Health. We interviewed CEO Andy Schoonover in episode 106, which we encourage you all to check out to learn more. But Andy founded Crowd Health after experiencing firsthand just how inept and outrageous insurance companies have become.
Crowd Health is not an insurance company, but a platform and a community that empowers you with a crowdfunding tool and a wealth of resources to efficiently manage your healthcare costs. And it's an excellent alternative to health insurance, allowing us to escape the healthcare matrix and put us and our healthcare providers back in charge.
Ever since my family and I made the switch to Crowd Health, not only are we proud to be part of a company with integrity, but we love that we are free from the broken insurance system. We will never be part of that system again. We've had nothing but an A+ experience. From before we even enrolled, we connected with an advocate who answered our questions. Then upon enrollment, we were immediately assigned a personal advocate who is literally a text away anytime I need her. If you follow them on Instagram and Twitter, you will see not only how much they truly care about each of the members, but also how much money they save us. This is why we encourage all of you to go to joincrowdhealth.org to learn more and to use code JUSTTHINK to get your first 3 months of membership for just $99 a month. Again, it's joincrowdhealth.org with discount code JUSTTHINK. You can also reference our Just Think the podcast Substack for more information.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to Just Think the podcast. This is Holly.
And Amy.
And Kristen.
And today we're joined by another very special guest, someone that Kristen and Amy actually introduced me to, Dr. Alan Jones. And we've asked him to come on as an absolute expert in muscle building, preservation, all the things muscle related. And before you say, oh, this episode is not for me, if you have oxygen in your lungs, this episode is for you. This is about life and vitality. And this is about the key to living well, aging well, and what we're learning, all of us, what we've learned. Dr. Gabrielle Lyons was one of the first influencers, doctors that I ever found that taught me so much about the muscle of longevity, which, or the organ of longevity, which she called the muscles, right? And the reason we wanted to talk to all of you today is there is so much noise out there right now, and we want to simplify it for you so that you know every day what you can be doing, what you should be doing to live well, age well, to also, for those of you who are interested in weight loss, this is for you as well. And I would rather call that fat loss, because what we don't want you to do is lose muscle. And that's why we think this conversation is so important. Kristen and Amy can attest to the fact our text threads are full of me absolutely losing my mind over the GLP-1 craze and the abuse, what I view as the abuse of this, and conversation that does not include side effects, and conversation that does not include, the fact that you will lose muscle if you're not trying to combat that. And so we are really more into broadening that conversation because we're seeing a real epidemic here. I don't know if you've paid attention in Hollywood, but what we're seeing pictures coming out of Hollywood now with Demi Moore. What's that pretty girl from Australia, y'all? That Amy, I know you'll remember the one that was in Wolf of Wall Street and
I can't remember, but I know Osborne. But I also know Kelly Osborne, right? She's looking.
Kelly
Sharon
Osbourne.
Osbourne. Oh my gosh. They start to look like Skeletor and then they're just losing even the muscle in their faces, you know? This is where we grew up in the 90s. We were girls of the 90s and we went through the wafy phase and the body dysmorphia phase where everybody thought that the only way to look was like a boy, like a rail, you know, like a 12-year-old boy. And we were thankful when the Kardashian J-Lo era came in and put some curves on some ladies and made that beautiful again, right? At least we're talking about what the social norms are. And now we're real concerned about what we see going backwards. And so, Dr. Jones, one of the reasons we wanted you to come in here is we wanted you to come from that expertise, that scientific knowledge level to help people understand what's really going on here and how they can, combat this and not buy into it. Because I do think we're really seeing. I actually heard Callie Means on a podcast probably 3 years ago, and he said, "I can't believe the people who were falling for the GLP-1 craze that didn't fall for the COVID vaccines." And those of us who, if you follow us, you know our stance. We were calling out COVID vaccines in 2021, right? And so the idea that people aren't really connecting the dots to the side effects and dangers, we find really troubling. And so what we want you to do, Dr. Jones, is come into this conversation, educate us, and then help us understand better alternatives to that. And that this does not have to be overly complicated or intimidating to do. Does that sound good to you? All right,
Sounds
Dr. Jones.
great. Yeah.
Perfect. I want to give you a proper, you are so credentialed that I got to read why you're the expert on this. So, okay. Alan Jones is a PhD. He's a senior vice president of research and development at Make Wellness and a specialist in sarcopenia and muscle focused nutrition. He holds a PhD in health sciences with a specialization in nutritional biochemistry and human performance. Heck yeah. A master of science in human nutrition and a bachelor of science in kinesiology. You spent 33 years in health, wellness, supplements, pharmaceuticals, and you have focused on the prevention of age-related loss of muscle mass, quality, function, and strength, and its impact on chronic disease and metabolic health. And that's why we want you on here, because as girls I'm 51, Chris and Amy are in their 40s, we know, because we live it, that you don't have to atrophy. You actually don't. But we want you to tell, help our audience understand how they don't either. And it does not, you don't have to be in the gym 85 hours a week to do it. So Dr. Jones, first of all, thank you for being with us. I know one of the first things before we dive into muscle, we know that because you come from the medical world in a lot of ways, you had your eyes open. And one of the questions I know that Amy wanted to ask you is, what was your just think moment when you started realizing maybe pharma didn't have all the answers for what ails us?
Holly, that's a great question. And first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I'm very honored to be able to do this. And my passion is to talk about muscle health, muscle physiology, and how we can improve our personal independence and our quality of life as we age. You guys are in your 30s and 40s. Well, I'm in my almost 60 stage, knocking on the door at 60. And so this is very important to me, to make sure that I live a healthy life. And also, my underlying reason for being here is because I watched my dad literally die of this disease, sarcopenia. And no doctors knew what it was about, no physicians. There was nothing that they were willing to do. In fact, when he went into the hospital, one of the doctors sat there and told me that he will not leave this hospital. Well, that really impacts me virtually every day of my life, because I let her lack of knowledge and lack of understanding influence me and my mom and my family at that particular point. And so I want to change that. But you asked the question, what was my aha moment to leave pharma? I was the CEO of a fairly good sized pharmaceutical manufacturing company in Fort Worth, Texas. And there were some things, and this is kind of all going back to the whole COVID era and what was happening with COVID and the whole vaccine issues. And I was never a believer in this vaccine. I did not like the way it was. And we developed pharmaceutical drugs. We also knew how long it took to get through the testing and the type of testings that were normally necessary to bring a drug to market. And none of that was going on with these COVID vaccines. And regardless of who was responsible for that, it was very irresponsible to put something into our bodies. And I was just a firm believer of, look, and you're injecting specific things that are genetically related. They're going to impact your genes. And there was, in my mind, as a biochemist and physiologist, there was just no way that this was going to turn out good. And I still believe to this day that it did not turn out good. I think we're starting to see some of the after effects of that, those second order and third order consequences that I always talk about when you're developing a product or you're looking at a new treatment or new protocol. What are the second order? What are the third order consequences? And those things, in my mind, there were nothing positive about that. And so my aha moment was how that was handled. My other aha moment was sitting back and watching a lot of the pharmaceutical companies go out and literally buy other companies that had a cure for a disease that might compete with a drug that they had that was a treatment for that disease, and literally close the company down. And so that's when I had pretty much had my belly full of the world of pharma. And I walked in, turned in my resignation and left. I told my wife before I did it, I said, I'm making changes. I'm leaving this job. I'm going back to school. I'm getting my PhD. And this was, in my 50s. And I'm redeploying myself for an entirely different mission than what I had had the previous 33, 34 years of my life. And so I did. I went back, took me 4 years, earned my PhD. My research area is sarcopenia. And this is the one area that I feel like we can impact more lives and help people gain more independence and a better quality of life as we age well into our later 70s, 80s, and even 90s. And so we can control that, because let me tell you something, losing muscle mass is not an inevitable part of aging. And we have to remember that we have control of that. So that was my aha moment right there.
I love it. Obviously, you're our kind of guy, Dr. Jones. We are right there with you. So will you define for anyone who does not know what sarcopenia really is?
Yeah, absolutely. So sarcopenia is the loss of muscle mass, function, and strength. Now, there are different types of sarcopenia. There's primary sarcopenia, which is typically age-related sarcopenia. They say age-related. I disagree with that somewhat. I think it's more sedentary or lack of inactivity related. Number one, that's primary. Secondary is sarcopenia in relation to some type of chronic illness or secondary condition, such as polypharmacy, for example. There are a number of pharmaceutical drugs that cause us to lose our muscle mass. And I will give you number one, and first and foremost, the biggest example of that are statin drugs. I've actually seen research coming out showing that statin drugs actually help sarcopenia. And I'm going to tell you that that is absolute bullcrap, because there is nothing about a statin drug that is going to positively impact our muscle mass. And just by its very nature, it's going to cause us to actually lose mitochondrial function, because it prevents the production, our body's natural production of coenzyme Q10, which is essential for mitochondrial function, and mitochondrial function is essential for muscle function. And if we're losing mitochondria because we're losing our coenzyme Q10, we're going to lose our muscle mass. So statins, by their very nature, are sarcopenia causing. I don't care what any researcher paid by Big Pharma tries to come out and tell us about statins, but they're devastating to our muscle health. And so that would be considered an example of secondary sarcopenia. Now, the impact of sarcopenia is this, Holly. When you start to lose your muscle mass, what that eventually leads to are really two things: frailty, which is never good. That's when we start breaking bones and we start breaking our hips and we start ended up in nursing homes and we start doing, getting those consequences, those second order, third order consequences that we're talking about, of losing our independence and losing our ability to care for ourselves. But then the other side, besides frailty, is chronic illness and chronic disease. Because I will tell you that literally the underlying cause of just about every chronic illness and disease that we have is lack of activity and loss of muscle mass. So sarcopenia is directly related to our chronic illnesses and diseases that we tend to get as we get older because we're not exercising our muscles. We're not moving those muscles. And so, sarcopenia can be very devastating for people.
Well, can we talk about, first of all, so much of what you said, starting with when you're losing your muscle, a lot of this is happening because of our sedentary lifestyle. So for people who say, well, my grandparents, my parents didn't have to lift weights. I come from a farming family. Like my roots are in agricultural North Carolina, right? My family worked until they died. They were in the gardens. They were on the farm. They were using their bodies until death. I mean, I'm not kidding. And so when I think about their lifestyle compared to what my children would inherit in terms of what's being required of them to physically do, it's vastly different. And so it makes sense to me that many of us now in this generation are having to go lift heavy things intentionally, move our bodies intentionally because our lifestyles in general and our work, our jobs aren't requiring it of us. Right? And so for anyone who's like, I don't know what all this craze is about, it's because we have learned for the last 30, 40 years that the American lifestyle is not conducive to health. And it's certainly not conducive to maintaining muscle. Okay, so now for the people who said, because I'm 51 years old, and the people who say, well, you're just getting older, is it scientifically proven that like our muscles are just atrophying because we're aging? Or is it looking more like our muscles we're losing muscle because we're not using it? Like you don't use it, you lose it. What's your take on it?
And also the metabolism piece of that too, that along with the muscle, as we get older, we talk about that people say, well, my metabolism's just slowing down. And I know you can tie that in too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your metabolic fitness is directly related to your muscle health. No doubt about it. And so the more muscle mass that we have, the better metabolic fitness we're going to possess as well. So yeah, you're exactly right. We have this mindset that as we age, we just automatically have to lose our muscle. And that's not the case. I've actually got studies and did a ton of research on the exercise physiology, the human performance component of this as we age. And there are studies that actually demonstrate that men and women in their 80s and 90s can actually put muscle mass back on their bodies with resistance training. So this is not something that we have to accept. Now, let me just tell you something. This messaging of it's inevitable, you're going to lose your muscle mass, you know what? It goes right along with you've got to be on 5 drugs for the rest of your life and become a customer of Big Pharma. And it's not the case. That's not the case at all. If we're active, let me point it to another direction here just a second. If you've never heard of these little chemicals called myokines, okay, the muscle that we exercise, our active, we're actively contracting, actively lifting those weights, we're pushing, even doing air squats, 25 air squats scattered throughout the day. And we'll talk a little bit later about exercise snacks, because that's a term that not many people are familiar with. But it's something that you can take and just basically 2-3 minutes a day, 4, 5, 6 times a day. That's all it takes to take, your muscle health from very poor to very good fairly quickly. But these little chemicals called myokines, and I'm going to look at these myokines from the perspective of sedentary muscle and active muscle. Sedentary muscle secretes one myokine. It's called myostatin. And that myostatin has one purpose, and that is to break down our muscles. Okay? Myostatin is very bad. In fact, for years, I searched for a myostatin inhibitor, knowing that if we could find a myostatin inhibitor, that we could help our muscle longevity and we could help prevent some of the loss of that muscle, even if we were somewhat sedentary. Okay. So sedentary muscle, one myokine, myostatin, muscle protein breakdown. Exercising muscle, on the other hand, secretes more than 600 known myokines, and there are obviously a lot more than that, but there's about 600 that we know about that actually influence every single organ system in our body. For example, there's a myokine that is secreted by exercising muscle called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. That brain-derived neurotropic factor impacts our brain and actually enhances the neuroplasticity of our brain. In other words, what it helps us do is it helps with cognitive function. It helps us maintain clarity. It helps us think better. But at the same time, it helps to prevent diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's, because BDNF is a powerful, powerful myokine secreted by exercising muscle that can impact our brain. We also have myokines that impact our heart, our liver, our pancreas, our bones. Look, when we are exercising and we're causing that mechanotransduction, that stress on our muscles, it puts stress on our bones and releases myokines that tell our bones, you got to grow, you got to get stronger, you've got to get harder, you've got to put more mineral into yourself because I need to support these exercising muscles. So this whole deal with osteopenia and osteoporosis, we don't need the drugs to treat them. We need the exercise to prevent them. Okay.
Yes.
And so we have a polypharmacy in our body that is magnitudes greater than and more powerful, orders of magnitude more powerful than any pharmaceutical that we can put into our body. And we have access to that if we'll just use it.
My God, we need everybody to hear that. Like mic drop, preach, like everything.
Seriously. But that's the most encouraging part. This is where I get so excited.
Yes.
Because we do have the power. I always quote Glenda the Good Witch from Wizard of Oz. You always had the power, my dear. You just you wouldn't have believed it, right? And it's like once you realize God, the Creator, deposited within me so much of what I need to live and to heal when there is disease. So much is already in there, and so much is in the earth for us to take and put back into our bodies to aid in that process, then it's exciting because now I'm not giving my health and wellness or my strength, my well-being, my vitality over to a third party. I am taking control of me, and it's within my power to live and age well, right? And that's the I will scream about this till we die. You know, it's like, please understand this westernized way of thinking that you give it all over to your doctor or even your nutritionist or to someone else, and you're not learning and doing for you first, man, you've missed the whole point. And that's when we get caught in these GLP-1 traps, right? We get caught in these crazes, and we're going all in on things without all the information and without knowledge of potential side effects and without knowledge of how to, for example, for people who are on GLP-1s, if someone hasn't told you that strength training and protein is like a non-negotiable for you, then they really, you need to find someone else you're talking to, right? Because this is where we're seeing a massive breakdown in what's happening to people. And we fear it's only going to get worse because we're seeing it get worse.
Hey, before we even go into even that, I also want to point out that I think a lot of people that don't even know where to start. I think a lot of people think I have to go to the gym, I have to have dumbbells, I have to do this, I have to lift heavy, I have to run, I have to do all these things that just seem so intimidating. And it's almost like looking around your house and seeing all this crap you got to clean, and you're like, I'm gonna take a nap instead. You know, it's like, so I think people need to realize, and I know we'll talk about even exercise snacks and stuff, but like it just takes a little bit And then it honestly is almost like an addiction after that, because once you see how it makes you feel and how much better it makes you feel. And I also think I shared something today where it was like, stop. If you shift the mindset, it's like, where is your why? If you shift your mindset from how's it going to make me look? The look isn't going to keep you there forever, but how capable is it going to make me? Like, it's like, where do you want to be when you're 70, when you're 75, when you're 80? If you do, some people don't care. You're like, I don't want to be here by then. But what if you do and you want to be here for your family, for your spouse, for whatever, then where does that take you? All the decisions you make right now is going to impact you later. Don't wait till it's too late. Just take a 10-minute walk. Go try to do a push-up. If you can't do a push-up, go against the wall. You're watching TV, more than likely. Everybody watches some TV. Grab some cans. Lift some cans. Like, do some squats. Do calf raises. Like, these little things, it's all contracting muscles, which is what Alan just said. Like, this is all your myokines releasing. Just think, every time you're doing that, you are benefiting your body. Every single movement that you make, this is improving your life.
Yeah, Kristen, you are so right. And I like what you said. I always use the phrase choose your hard, because I'm just going to tell you what is hard: putting a little bit of effort into a workout now, or living the rest of your life when you get into your 60s and 70s in a nursing home, sitting in a wheelchair, loss of independence, poor quality of life. To me, that's hard. That is not what I want. I want my hard now. And I tell you, my wife, Laura, and I, we get up pretty much every morning. It's a rare occasion that we don't get up and do some kind of exercise every morning. And not every morning for us is strength training. I mean, some mornings we get on, and I call them my sweat sessions. I get on a Stairmaster and I just bust it out for an hour, hour and a half. I just want a good detoxifying sweat session. You don't have to have a Stairmaster to go do that. One of the things you said about 10-minute walk, walking, we'll say by itself, doesn't cause significant contractions of our muscles. It's a real low contracting type of movement. However, if you start and just grab you a little backpack and take a little bottle of water, a 16-ounce bottle of water, and you just start putting some bottles of water in that backpack and do what's called rucking. Now, all of a sudden, you're adding a little bit of weight to that walk. Guess what you're starting to make your muscles do? Contract harder, okay? And it's that more difficult muscle contraction is where you're going to get the benefits of your myokine secretion and expression through your body. So, like, for example, probably 3, maybe 4 days a week, we'll take our dog on a walk, and we have a little, anywhere from 1.5 mile to 3 mile trek, kind of depends on the day and what's going on. And my days, being very busy, we will go on like 1.5 mile ruck. I've got a 50-pound weighted vest that I put on. She's got a 20-pound weighted vest that she puts on. It's a weighted vest. And I hear these people say, well, weighted vests, not all they're cut out to be. Well, let me tell you something. They are. When it comes to myokine expression and secretion, absolutely they are, because that's how you take advantage of your myokines. Air squats, 25 air squats. If you can't do an air squat, do what's called a sit stand. That's sit down in a chair and stand back up. Try not to use your hands, and make sure your chair is braced. If you're older and, a bit weaker and you're just getting into this, sit stands may be a great way for you to start. Wall push-ups, even getting between a door and putting your hands on both sides. You can't see my hands, but just pushing and count to 5 every time and let those muscles contract. Even those isolated pushes, those wall pushes or door jam pushes, are going to cause your muscles to contract. Okay. So there are a lot of things that is so simple. And if we'll just take that little 2 or 3 minute exercise snacks throughout the day, if we've been setting for a while, set an alarm. Don't let yourself set for more than an hour without getting up and doing something. Calf races while we're working, I love to cook and I love to, barbecue out and stuff like that. But you know what? When I'm preparing whatever meat it is that I'm fixing to cook, I'll do 25 calf raises. And I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but they're starting to say that your calves are actually acting like a second heart in our bodies, because those contractions of our calf muscles what do? They force blood back up. So in blood, instead of pulling into our lower extremities, we can use our calves and those contractions from our calves to help blood flow. But not only the blood flow, you're getting that myokine secretion and expression as well. So there are so many just little bitty tiny things that we can do. Like I said, grab a couple of cans, do some,
And I know that like that's not like what obviously you're going to get a whole lot more benefit if you do resistance training, if you go out and sweat and do a little more power stuff. But I will also say, yes, you get on the Stairmaster for like an hour and a half, but I will tell you right now, I'm probably stronger than I've ever been for numerous reasons, but I actually work out less for less time, but with more intention. Like I can get just as much out of a 30-minute powerful workout as I can an hour and a half, and sometimes even better, because when I know it's a shorter time frame, I put more into it. And then I'm also eating more than I ever have, more protein. I'm being more intentional with what I'm eating. I'm fuller longer, but I'm definitely having more volume, more protein. So there's just so many different things that you can do. It doesn't take 2 hours out of your day. But, the exercise snacks are just really important. And I will say one more thing, because I know we want to get on to some of the other stuff, but what's really important too, what Alan's saying, like the second heart with your calf raises and stuff like that. When you're on flights and traveling, think about that, y'all. When you're in the car, move your calf, like do some little point and flex, point and flex, point and flex, because you don't want to sit there and just be stagnant. Okay. You want to move around. And when you're on the sidelines, I'm like, I never sit and watch my kids play sports. I'm over there probably yelling. So I have to be standing up. Or I yell a lot louder and better when I'm standing. But I'll be over there and bust out some squats. And if you're embarrassed to do that, do calf raises. You can't see them as much. People won't care.
Yeah.
But once you
Yeah.
start doing them, people join you.
Well, we did that whole episode with one of the Alzheimer's advocates who was talking about
Rachel.
stronger legs and stronger body, less likelihood of getting Alzheimer's, right? And how a squat is one of the best things you can do to combat Alzheimer's. And again, like you just said, these snacks, 10 while you're cooking dinner, 10 when you get up in the morning, 10 after you have lunch, right? Like it doesn't have, I think where, like Kristen said, people get paralyzed at the thought that they got to go get a gym membership and a trainer. When really
Yeah.
start where you are and start incorporating these snacks in. And what you'll find is now, because I know the three of us, I'm obsessed with strength training now. And I was a runner since I was 19 years old. I ran my whole life, but 19, I was like a daily runner. And I became obsessed with strength training in my 40s because I found out that like I need that for injury prevention as a runner, and also just because I didn't want to atrophy, my body. And so I'm telling you right now, I'm obsessed with it because when you see the gains, and listen, it's not about bulking up, ladies. Quit being afraid of that. Honestly, I'd rather you look bulky and be healthy than look like Demi Moore and be atrophying right away. I'm serious. Like, please put some muscle on. But it's not about that. It's really not about that. But what you'll find is when you feel strong, you feel empowered, right? And I feel like a badass. I'm not gonna lie. I do, because I will go lift heavy stuff. I'll outlift men in the gym some days. And I'm like, I am 51. Now, good for you for being here, but you're gonna need to pick up a heavier weight right now.
I think
Yeah.
too, I think knowing, even if you don't like to exercise, you're scared of it, it's overwhelming, whatever. I think just knowing how important, I think we have learned so much about muscle over the past year and a half, but just how important it is it affects everything in your body. It affects your hormones. It affects your brain, your heart, your lungs, your longevity, your vitality. Like if you could just speak to all the different things. I know you say that muscle is like our largest endocrine organ, right? And a lot of doctors may not even classify it as that or know that. And just the downstream cascade of effects when you have muscle in your body, even to the fact that it's going to help you burn fat. Everybody wants to lose fat. Well, one of the best ways to do that is to put more muscle on, because muscle is going to help burn fat. So there's all these benefits of having muscle. So if you just kind of think of it that way, maybe that'll inspire you to want to move.
Mm-hmm.
And can I ask a question too about this, Dr. Jones, that maybe you can speak to? So many women my age now are worried about osteoporosis. They're worried about bone health. Can you talk about how the muscle and strength training can impact the bones as well?
Absolutely. I mean, muscle has a massive impact on our bone health. And it goes back to, not only the mechanotransduction of the contraction itself, putting the stress on the bone, causing the bone to grow, but it's the myokines as well that impact and basically just they signal. If you think about myokines as being peptides, peptides are all the rage right now. And what is a peptide? A peptide is simply a cell signaling compound. It's something that binds to receptors on cells. And in this particular case, these myokines are peptides that bond to receptors on bone cells, osteoblasts. And it tells those osteoblasts, you need to grow, you need to strengthen, you need to multiply, you need to do all the things that you can do to support me, because otherwise I, muscle, am going to kick your butt if you don't, literally. Okay. And so when you start contracting those muscles, those myokines are telling those osteoblasts that you've got to grow. You've got to get stronger. And that's how muscle impacts bone health. Now, I will also say that there's this situation that occurs in our body called organ crosstalk. And in this particular case, it would be muscle-bone crosstalk. And so when our muscles are secreting myokines, our bones are also secreting what are called osteokines, chemicals from the bones that talk back to the muscle. And so there's a crosstalk that goes on and it occurs when we're exercising, we're building bone, bones telling muscle you can lift more, muscles telling bone you got to grow more, bones telling muscle you can lift even more because I'm stronger. There's this constant crosstalk going on that is initiated by the myokines, but it continues that process with the osteokines as well. And that happens with every organ. We have cardiokines in our heart that talk back to our muscles. We have the BDNF in our brain. That BDNF also communicates back to our muscles. We have in our liver, we have pancreas. We have all these different compounds. And so there's this muscle to organ crosstalk that occurs. Heck, muscle even communicates with our microbiome and tells our microbiome in our gut what it needs to do as well. But the microbiome is also secreting these little chemokines coming from our microbiome, telling our muscle what it needs to do as well. So you've got crosstalk. When you start talking about cellular intelligence, Holly, this is something that we're really just now starting to even scratch the surface of. 10 years ago, nobody even knew what a myokine was. When I was doing my dissertation for sarcopenia, I was asking physicians and nurses and healthcare practitioners, I had a number of them, what is a myokine? Can you explain what a myokine does? Virtually every single person in my study had no idea what a myokine even was. I'll tell you another story. So Dr. Mark Bartlett is my partner at Make Wellness. He's our chief scientific officer. Dr. Bartlett gave a speech at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. There were more than 500 functional medicine doctors, and his whole speech was on myokines. They had no clue what a myokine even was. And this is 500 functional medicine specialists. So the concept that we're talking about is very, very new, number one. Number two, very powerful. And number three, you'll never, ever, ever hear a pharmaceutical company talk about this because it's going to impact their wallet in a really bad way. Okay. If we are doing the things that we need to do to secrete and express our myokines through our muscles, that eliminates a lot of the need out there for these medications for these chronic illnesses and diseases that are making these pharmaceutical companies rich. Okay. We have the capability and the capacity to change that. We don't need antidepressants if we're going to the gym. It's impossible for somebody to be depressed if they're going to the gym and working out. And there are studies all over the place that show that exercise is more beneficial than antidepressants in reversing and preventing depression. It's everywhere. All we have to do is take a little initiative, be accountable for our own health and well-being, and go do it. That's what we have to do.
So you're saying mental health, you're saying bone health, you're even saying gut health, right? You're heart health, all these things. And when you mentioned statins earlier, one of the questions we've had about statins is we know what it does, that it's decreasing muscle. And we're like, if statins are ultimately about heart health, isn't the heart a muscle? why would we want to take something that could decrease our muscle, our heart muscle? Like it just didn't compute for us, right? And so basically what you're saying is when you are in the gym and you are or at home, wherever you're going to start building your muscle, guys, because it can be anywhere. When you don't have to have anything, you can do body weight strength. I know a guy who looks insanely amazing, ripped, cut, and he had an injury from lifting weights. He only does body weight. Y'all, I mean, like unbelievable. Like it doesn't have to be super complicated. But what we
Mhm.
want to
Yeah.
encourage everyone to do, you got to start doing it. If you really say you want to live and age well, and you want to feel well, like you got to build your muscles. And it affects as you just explained. Just
Well,
it
and
affects
this goes right into another thing what Amy had suggested or talked about was thinking about if none of that matters to you, we know what matters right now in a huge way is weight and fat loss. And I think I'm like, I wish people would stop thinking about how much they need to lose and think about how much they need to gain. Think about gaining muscle because when you gain muscle, the fat is going to melt away. Stop looking at the scale. I'm like, F the scale. I mean, or get it out of your head because that number may go up. But that's because, and it's not that muscle weighs more than fat. It's just that it's more dense, it's more solid, and it takes up less space. So you're going to look a hell of a lot better, even if you don't like the scale. So can you touch on how muscle, when we talk about metabolism too, like muscle is basically that is what you want to prioritize. If you want to prioritize losing weight, which is like Holly said, it's not weight, it's fat that you want to lose, then start focusing on muscle. Why is that?
Yeah, well, again, muscle equals longevity. Muscle equals metabolic fitness. When you're focused on your muscle, and listen, let's answer one particular question that you're going to get about sarcopenia. What are the cures for sarcopenia? There are only two cures for sarcopenia: resistance training exercises, building our muscles that way, and high protein diets. Okay. The two things that we tend to do the least amount of as we get older, we tend to be less active and we tend to eat more ultra processed, high carbohydrate food because for some reason, I don't know what it is about taste buds. As we get older, we like carbohydrate and we like high processed, addictive foods like that. So you have to focus on your diet. You have to focus on your exercise. Okay. There are also some other supplements that you could add to that can really enhance those benefits. We'll talk about those here in just a little bit. But when you start talking about body composition, and that's really what this boils down to, how do we rebalance our body composition to be more favorable metabolically? And the way that we do that is through exercise, resistance training, and high protein diets, right? When you start talking about sedentary activity, what happens is we start to secrete that myostatin. That myostatin starts to break our muscles down. The second order effect of that is that fat starts to infiltrate our muscle fibers. This is a condition called myosteatosis. Myosteatosis, myosteatosis. And myosteatosis leads to a lack of muscle density, very, very poor muscle quality, muscle dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction, and then all the chronic illnesses and diseases that cascade down from there. Okay. So we are trying to prevent myosteatosis, the infiltration of fat into our muscles. By exercising, by high protein diet, by resistance training, we can prevent that myosteatosis. And if we do have myosteatosis, we can reverse that myosteatosis because when you start building those muscle fibers back up, those muscle fibers will basically consume that fat for energy, get it out of there, and they'll start building dense, more functional, more viable muscle. And your metabolic fitness starts to go up, your longevity goes up, your quality of life goes up, your independence goes up, everything positive goes from there. Okay. So body composition rebalancing should be the ultimate go for everything that we do from a muscle perspective. All right. We have to get our body to a positive state of metabolic fitness, not the negative state of myosteatosis. All right.
Mhm.
And that's what it's about, a rebalancing of our body composition.
Yes.
So I have another question while we're on the vanity conversation of losing the fat, which we should do for metabolic reasons and health, right? But okay, let's just pretend that it's about vanity too. Okay. I have read, and tell me if this is true, that those women who, or men that lift weights tend to show their age much more slowly, particularly in their face. And I assume it has to do with even muscles within your face, but can you speak to that at all for women who are like thinking of all the Botox fillers and facelifts? Can we talk about how muscle training can also impact how old you look?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, muscle is the longevity organ in our bodies, right? And so the more we exercise that muscle, again, I mean, it impacts whatever muscles we're exercising, impacts all the other muscles in our bodies as well. That's the endocrine function of muscle. And so that endocrine function means the hormonal function, right? So whether it's paracrine or whatever, I mean, it impacts everything in our bodies, from our skin, which is our largest organ, right, in our body. It covers everything. So even our skin is impacted by exercise. So when you start talking about vanity, there is nothing that can basically enhance our appearance better than muscle. And I will tell you this, I'm a big fan of an athletic build. I want to see, like, my wife is I think, very athletically built. And, she was a college athlete. And so she's been an athlete all of her life. But that athletic build where you see the muscle and you don't see this example of, we call it Ozempic face, where they're losing the muscles in their jaws and their face and they start to get this sag, or the Ozempic butt, where they literally lose virtually all of their glutes, their gluteus maximus, which is your butt muscle. So we call it Ozempic butt and Ozempic face, and that is just not a healthy look. It would be considered what you might, call skinny fat per se, because you're losing that muscle. That muscle's getting replaced with fat, whether you like it or not. And so if you're building squishy muscles, weak muscles, dysfunctional muscles, nothing good is going to happen with that. And what's going to eventually happen is a condition called sarcopenic obesity. Okay. These people, they look thin, but they have this condition of obesity within their muscles. This myostatin has infiltrated their muscle mass. And so now, instead of having muscle, which is metabolically active, it's structurally very strong for our bodies, it allows us to function properly. Now, all of a sudden, all that is just converted to fat. And fat is not functional other than providing some energy and providing some insulation. And I don't think that that's really what we're looking for ultimately. So ultimately, it's better to focus on the muscle. But let me just tell you this. You talked about some of the issues with some of the side effects of these GLP-1s. And now we have these second generation and third generation GLPs coming out now as well. But you talked about the side effects. Well, let me tell you something. These GLP-1s, I'm going to basically call them what they are. They are tools. And for people that are really, really metabolically sick, in other words, they have a huge level of body fat, they have diabetes, cardiovascular disease, these things can be a benefit, okay? The problem becomes, and I'm going to tell you a story. This is a story that just recently happened within the last 3 to 4 weeks. I was at a family function, and a very, very close family member that I haven't seen in a long time was at that function. And this woman had lost about 55 pounds. Before this, now she was very heavy, morbidly obese, very unhealthy, but she had lost 55 pounds. And so I got to talking to her. Of course, I'm automatically thinking, yep, she's on GLP-1. There's no doubt about it. Well, listen to this story. She was on a GLP-1. She lost 55 pounds in 4 months. Okay. Her doctor, now this is where I have the biggest problem with the medical community right now. Her doctor didn't start her on a titration schedule where he was trying to find the lowest effective dose. He immediately put her on a 12 milligram dose of Ozempic, 12 milligrams, okay? And
Wow.
she went from, I mean, she had the nausea, she had the vomiting, she had the constipation, she had a lot of these side effects, lost 55 pounds in 4 months, but her hair was coming out in clumps. So because of all the side effects, she stopped the Ozempic. She's like, I cannot do this. It was making her emotionally unhealthy as well. It was impacting her mental health. She was having serious issues. But then on top of this, she's going bald. And I just told her, I said, look, number one, your doctor ought to be sued for malpractice because that is serious malpractice right there. He should have never put you on a dose that high. That doctor did not respect the power of these peptides. That's a shame. And that should never happen. Number one. Number two, you're going to have to reset yourself metabolically if you're ever going to get your hair to stop falling out. And I will tell you this, there's one thing that this young lady had. She had a beautiful set of hair. She's always, since she was a little girl, and she's my niece. She's in her early 30s right now. And she's always had this most beautiful head of hair on her, always. Well, now all of a sudden, she looked like she's going bald. And I was actually, when I first saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, does she have cancer? Is she going through chemotherapy or what is going on? Well, nope, that wasn't it. Her body went into this whole mode of fight or flight, and these stress hormones started overwhelming her, and her body started losing all this weight. Well, guess what? Now it's into preservation mode. And that preservation mode, when you hit that preservation mode and you're losing that much weight that fast, your body goes into starvation mode and says, what do I need and what do I not need? I don't need muscle because I'm not doing anything. I'm losing all this weight. It's metabolically expensive. Get rid of the muscle. I don't need hair because hair is metabolically very expensive to our bodies to maintain our hair. If you don't want hair, lose a whole bunch of weight real fast and your hair will start falling out because of the stress that you put on your body for that. Okay. She was experiencing all that. And so now I'm working with her. We talk at least once a week and trying to reset her body metabolically where she can go in and get her into a more healthy lifestyle. She's paying attention to her diet now. Not one word was mentioned about diet and exercise. Not one. Okay. Not one word mentioned about how we should titrate this thing up and find your minimal, the lowest effective dose that we could possibly. Not one word was spoken to her about, oh, well, your hair might start falling out. This doctor had the mindset of, I've got to get 55 pounds off of her as fast as I can. Well, he did. And it was
And I'm not,
devastating.
hey, I do want to interject here too, because I want to just add to this. If y'all don't know, I'm a nurse and anybody who knows that I'm a nurse, but I worked at an IV hydration clinic and we also had a weight loss clinic. And I can attest to all of this that even though we are not knocking, I'm not trying to knock people on these because I know there is a benefit when it does take when it takes the weight off. But when you don't do it correctly and when you are
Exactly.
not fully informed, y'all know that is our biggest thing is that we want everybody, whether it's vaccines, medications, anything, you need to have all of the information to make a great decision for you. And you need to do it correctly. And I literally think that it was at least 80% of the people, maybe 90, of everybody who came in, they all had side effects. We had to give them B12 injections for energy and for nausea. We gave them Zofran. We had to give them IV fluids because they're dehydrated. And it's not that the meds do this, y'all. It's that the meds slow your gastric emptying. It makes you full. You're not hungry. So once again, and then you're tired. Think about it. You're not eating. You're not drinking, you're not moving because you're tired. Your microbiome is jacked up. Now you're losing muscle. You're in starvation mode. So just think about it's the culmination. It's like the second and third generation. What the problem, the sequelae or whatever that happens with just one thing. It's not the shot. It's everything that comes with it if you don't do it right. And then you sit here and think, well, people will argue and say, well, I'd rather them have lower their blood pressure, not be obese, not have the cardiac issues. And I agree with all of that. But think about this. When you lose everything else, your metabolic hub, your muscle, and then you lose your microbiome, which and that's your gut brain access, your muscle brain access, access, everything. You got to think risk and benefit. And I think we had people coming in, they just wanted to lose the last 5 pounds. And I'm like, that is not what these need to be used for. And then you don't know how to titrate off. Or if you do titrate off, there's rebound weight gain because your body doesn't know what to do anymore because you stopped what it was supposed to be doing. So this is where we don't want anybody who's listening to this, because chances are people who are listening to this, and everybody knows somebody on these drugs, okay? But just know that when you are on it, you have to prioritize protein, you have to prioritize muscle health and hydration. And we also want to make sure you know that there are other options. So, like, if you can just speak to any of that too, Alan. I just wanted to throw that in.
Well, I wanted to also say too, like I learned from you and Dr. Mark too, that, we GLP-1 is naturally occurring in our body. And the half-life of that peptide that's innate in our bodies is like 1 to 2 minutes. It comes, it tells your body what to do and it leaves. The half-life of the GLP-1 synthetic peptides is like, what, 7 days?
7 days. That's correct. That's right.
So that's just a huge shift from what our bodies are innately used to. It's just this overriding what our natural process is.
Yeah, and when you have a peptide in the body that attaches itself to a receptor for that long of a period of time, then what you get is this constant, almost pounding on this receptor for that whole time. And so what happens over a period of time is you get these negative feedback loop mechanisms where your body forgets how to produce its own natural peptides because it's been replaced. It's sending signals to your brain that you don't need to produce it anymore. And over a long period of time, this negative feedback loop activation causes our body to somewhat forget how to do it in the right way. And so there's a lot of therapeutic peptides that can have this impact on our bodies. And that's why I use the word respect. If you're not respecting the power of these peptides, you are asking for trouble. You are flirting with disaster on so many levels, okay? And so if you don't know enough about the peptide to respect the power of that peptide, you have no business using that peptide. I don't care what the pharmaceutical companies are telling you. Well, you can go to a 3 milligram or a 6 milligram or a 9 milligram or a 12 milligram dose. No, you need to start at a half of a milligram, 500 micrograms, and you start titrating up. And when you find that 1 or 2 milligram dose that is having the benefit of 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's not going to throw your body into a level of stress that you can't get out of. I tell you what, I get sick and I see it all the time. These Instagram, what do you call them? Influencers that are sitting there, oh, my GLP-1 journey, I've lost 50 pounds in 4 months. Well, you know what? That's stupid. And it is. It's ridiculous because your body cannot maintain and sustain that over a period of time. So what happens when you come off of that? The rebound impact of that is that every bit of that weight, let's say that you lost 50 pounds. Well, 40% of that probably is muscle. Okay. So 20 pounds out of that 50 is muscle. That's gone. And when that rebound impact hits you because you didn't do it the right way and you weren't eating right and you weren't exercising right and you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, and you hit your body with this fight or flight mechanism that puts you into starvation mode, that rebound impact comes in, and guess what you've got now? Now you've got osteosarcopenia and sarcopenic obesity, and you've got all these side effects that are all related to sarcopenia because you've lost all that muscle. And guess what? Your downstream impact of that is going to be frailty, and you're going to be in a nursing home. And you better start paying attention to it. You better start respecting the power of these things, or you're asking for a lot of trouble later on.
And I think that's one of the things we want to warn people about. And if you're on one and you're realizing this could be your future, let's talk about what they can do, because I know you have some alternatives. And I want to preface it by saying, back in the day when these first came on the scene, people would say, well, they have to be injected. cannot take things orally. It's going to have to be injected. Now I see those same companies who were making those claims that it had to be injected. I see them moving towards these oral. I don't understand. You'll understand better than I do how it all works. But the point to say is that now even the drug companies are saying, here's a pill instead of an injection. But
Yeah.
let's talk about other means of doing this. I know Make Wellness, that's kind of been their claim to fame, right? It's like we
Yeah.
want to provide this without slowing your digestion. I mean, listen, we say the term full of shit, but it's not funny, but these things can really make you full because you're not emptying, right? The GLP ones, the traditional. Okay. So can you talk about how you discovered, you and the team, and how you stumbled into this world where something exists that can provide this without all of that associated?
Right. Holly, and I'm glad you brought that up because let me start by saying this whole notion that bioactive peptides cannot pass through the gut and enter circulation and influence cell signaling is absolutely wrong. And I will tell you this, if there's one thing that the pharma world has done very, very good over the past 100 plus years is they have built a model of gastric digestion. Simulated gastric digestion is what we call it in the drug testing world. Because every time we develop a drug, we have to put it through simulated gastric digestion to find out how that drug or how that peptide reacts when it's ingested as a drug. Okay. And what we know through simulated digestive, a gastric digestion, well, I should say gastric digestion simulation, is that our peptides actually do remain intact and they do avoid being broken down. And there are a ton of bioactive peptides that are out there that have been shown to demonstrate the ability to survive gastric digestion and influence their cell signaling receptors, okay? With that said, the difference between a bioactive peptide and a therapeutic peptide is this. Bioactive peptides occur naturally in our foods. Those bioactive peptides have a number of built-in, innately protective mechanisms that can prevent the digestion and breakdown of those bioactive peptides to allow them to get through digestion. Also, the human body has a number of different peptide transport systems. These systems are active in our bodies literally the day that we're born, okay? Because the vast majority of immunity that is transferred from mamas to babies occurs through what? Colostrum. We don't inject colostrum into our babies. Our babies get it from mother's milk, right? From nursing. And so there is a huge amount of immunity transferred from mama to baby during those first several days. And guess what? The vast majority of that is done through peptides because of those peptide transport systems. And I've heard people say, well, it can do it maybe diet peptides or maybe tripeptides, which is a 2 amino acid or 3 amino. No, these are huge peptides that survive digestion, transported through the system, hit our target receptors, either enhance our immunity or enhance our growth or whatever. There's these growth factors. We have this ability from the day we're born. And so it is very naive to believe that every time we eat a steak and you're getting, 60 or 80 grams of protein in that steak, that every single gram of that protein is broken down into its single amino acid. That may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard because that's exactly what doesn't happen. What happens is that steak is full of peptides, all kinds of bioactive peptides. And those bioactive peptides can cause cell signaling throughout our body. That's why steak is such a nutritious, nutrient-dense meal. It's not just because of the vitamins and the minerals and the amino acids, but it's because of the peptides that we get as well, okay? Now, let me take that a step further. At Make Wellness, we have identified very specific bioactive peptides, for example, in our product Fit. And let me just preface this by saying one thing. Every single person on a GLP-1 should be also taking Fit and our product Hydrated, because those two products, that 1-2 punch, we've actually done a number of case studies on GLP-1 users using that combination to show that it basically inhibits muscle protein breakdown. It prevents some of the inflammatory responses that are occurring from the GLP-1s, and the hydrated actually keeps our cells hydrated where we're not getting dehydrated and we're not losing the functional viability of our peptides. So every single person that is on a GLP-1 should be taken fit and hydrated. Now, fit has two primary peptides. Those two peptides, one is a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory, and the other is a very, very powerful muscle protein synthesis enhancer that also, guess what, inhibits myostatin. It's the only thing that I have found. In fact, funny story, that's how I got to Make Wellness, because when I started talking to our owner, Justin Prince, about joining Make Wellness, I kind of made a smart aleck response to him because I was deep in my research and my search for this myostatin inhibitor. If you can find me a myostatin inhibitor, I'll join Make Wellness. And this was 2 years ago. The very first research study that he had our biotech firm send to me, they didn't know that I'd even said this. And the very first research study that we have, it was a human clinical study done on a number of men, and it actually showed a significant myostatin inhibition of about 57% over the placebo. And I like to fell out of my chair, number one, when I was reading the study. And number two, I was like, well, Lord, I guess I know where I'm going now, because here we go. I made the smart aleck remark, you show me and I'm in. Well, he showed me and I'm in, and I'm still in. And so anyway, so that myostatin was how I got to Make Wellness. But fit can inhibit myostatin. It inhibits the loss of muscle, but it enhances our muscle protein synthesis. But it works in conjunction with the hydrated, because that hydrated keeps our cells hydrated, keeps our intracellular and extracellular fluid balanced out like it's supposed to be. And it makes those receptors very prone to receiving those signals from the peptides in fit. And on top of that, it prevents the muscle loss and muscle protein breakdown associated with GLP-1s. So that's a huge, huge benefit for that product.
And those peptides are from fava beans. So
They
when
are
you're
from
talking
fava
about
beans.
food
That's right.
and nature, like it's actually literally from fava bean. And
Yep.
then another option for people with, along with GLP-1, like if you want natural support or even tapering off, is adding in lean. If you can speak to lean, like what the benefits of lean are and how it differs.
Yeah, well, lean definitely differs from a GLP-1, because lean actually will work with our body's own natural GLP-1 by inhibiting an enzyme called DPP4. So when our body secretes GLP-1, what it is doing is basically saying, I'm full, I've had enough, right? It's time to digest and break down food, and so on and so forth. And then DPP4 comes in and it helps to break down that GLP-1 signal. Well, we want to extend that GLP-1 signal for a little bit longer. It doesn't need to be a lot longer, but just a little bit longer. And so by impacting DPP4, by inhibiting its activity, we can actually extend the half-life of our GLP-1 naturally. Now, we don't do it for 7 days. You're talking about maybe taking it from a 2 to 3 minute half-life up to a 20 to 30 minute half-life. But that can be significant in helping us feel a little bit fuller, venting the carbohydrate cravings that a lot of people will get after they've had a meal. They want to have something sweet, got to have something sugary. That will prevent them from having that extra piece of dessert. And so just that little extension of the GLP-1 will benefit people from a reduction in calories, a reduction in, that ultra high processed food, those desserts, those sugary things that we like to eat after we've had a meal. So lean is a very, very powerful peptide combined with some bioactive polyphenols as well. And those bioactive polyphenols actually enhance our body's ability to use stored body fat, especially visceral fat, which is the fat that kind of gathers around our organs and stuff. So this fit, hydrated, and then when you're weaning yourself off, and even if you don't even want to go that route, fit, lean, hydrated is an extremely powerful combination for rebalancing our body composition.
Mm-hmm. And then one more thing, like if we can talk about sleep, just really quick, because I feel like people don't realize how important sleep is, because this is so crucial in muscle health and recovery and muscle building. Because a lot of people think, oh, it really doesn't do that you're just sleeping. But if we can just briefly touch on that, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, talking about sleep, let me tell you about a study that I just saw yesterday. And this really doesn't have anything to do with the muscle building side, although we'll talk about that here in just a second. But let me ask you ladies one question. What is more important with regards to sleep? Is it the time you go to bed every night? Or is it the time you wake up every morning? Or is it the amount of time that you actually sleep every day? What would be your response to that?
I was going to say quality, but that's not an answer.
Mm.
Like,
Is it the time you go to bed?
I bet it's the time you go to bed.
I don't know why I'm just thinking.
Because
Okay.
it was
What do you
something about
think,
for
Colin?
every hour before 12 o'clock. I
Well,
heard that.
what I was thinking was because I feel like this is almost a trick question because I have this Whoop thing that, tracks my sleep. And one of the things that Whoop is telling me, because, it will tell you the things you're doing that are decreasing your biological age, right? That are slowing your rate of aging. And what it will tell me is it says, hey, you're doing a good job of getting deep sleep. You're doing a good job of getting enough sleep most days, but you need to rein in your time you go to bed.
Yes, because it's a circadian rhythm, I bet.
Is
I mean,
that
I
what it
bet
is?
like
So is it time you go to bed?
It is. The time that you go to bed is the single most important factor regarding sleep architecture. Now, sleep
we're screwed.
architecture is time, duration,
Like,
right? It doesn't have anything to do with deep sleep, REM sleep. That's not what we're talking about here. But a study that I just saw yesterday that followed more than 3,000 participants over a 10-year period of time actually demonstrated that the time that you go to bed every single night, at the more consistent you are with that time. For example, you go to bed at 9 o'clock every night consistently, you have a 50% reduction in cardiovascular disease. Okay. That is how powerful your sleep time is. The time that you go to bed every single night, 50% reduction in cardiovascular disease. Now, let's talk about the importance of sleep for muscle health, because vitally, vitally important. There's a couple of things that you're going to see that sleep has a bidirectional relationship with exercise. Sleep has a bidirectional relationship with diet. The better your diet is, the better your sleep is. The more you exercise throughout the day, the better your sleep is. The better your sleep is, the more motivated to work out, the more motivated to eat better you're going to be. Okay, so there's definitely a bidirectional relationship between all three of those. But sleep is so important because sleep is where our muscles repair and rebuild and regenerate themselves. Okay, sleep is also where our brains help to rejuvenate and replenish our neurotransmitters that we've been using all day long. It helps to replenish our hormones. It helps to secrete our growth hormone so that our growth hormone and our IGF-1 levels are at an optimal level. It helps us to suppress cortisol levels to the point to where we can manage our stress. So there are a number of benefits to getting optimal sleep. But I would say that you've got to pay attention to that, to the time and consistency of when you go to sleep every single night if you really want to get the full impact of sleep, not just for cardiovascular disease, but for your muscle health and your endocrine function as well.
Awesome.
That's so good to know. And I do feel like we could do a whole nother hour with you on the sleep portion because I do think for women who are like starting to with their hormones and they're starting to struggle with sleep, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of learning how to correct your sleep, right? Like, and it's going to take you doing some learning. It's going to take you doing some figuring it out. But I will say, and the girls can even I prioritize sleep so much now that like there's not much I'll let get in the way of it because I know it's exactly what you said. When I don't sleep good, first of all, nobody wants to be around me because
I
I
was about
get
to say that's when the bad one comes out.
yes,
Yeah.
that is when not nice Holly shows up. and wants to hurt everyone in the house. Like, it's not good. So if I get when I start there and when my sleep's good, I get up, I want to exercise. I want to take care of my body. When I'm taking care of my body, I want to eat well, right? When I'm eating well, I feel good. So I want to do the exercise. And then when I wear myself out, I want to go to sleep at a reasonable time.
Yep,
So
exactly.
it's like this cycle. So definitely do not neglect sleep. Don't think we're saying strength train and move your body and like forget. No, like sleep is so critically important.
It
It's
is.
so important. And I've lived it. I know. Trust me. Well, I know we got to wrap things up, but Dr. Jones, I just want to thank you so much for putting this in terms everyone can understand, for inspiring people right now to know, stop sitting in analysis paralysis, go do your exercise snacks, go do 20 squats right now. Go do it. And start learning to do a push-up. Like start learning to do a sit-up. Do things, do planks that strengthen your core. All can be done in your bedroom. They can be done on the sidelines, as Kristen said. Let's all quit worrying about what people think. Let's go strengthen our bodies every chance we get, because it is the secret to not just longevity. It's not about adding years to your life as much as adding life to your years, so that you live well while you're on this earth and you can do the things you want to do. Because
hopefully everybody can just like envision myokines. Like from now on, after you listen to this podcast, all you're going to do every time your muscle contracts is you're just going to envision all these, like, I just envision these like splashy strings, like just floating out of my muscles and going and doing all their magic.
That's right. That's
There
exactly
you
right.
go.
And
All
more
about the
than
myokine.
exactly
Yep.
600 of them babies working hard for you every single time. Think about that. Yep.
Yes.
I also
So,
just want to say that I love Dr. Jones's accent. I can tell you're a Southern gentleman, and you say sit down, and that's what my daddy says, my Southern daddy. He's like, come sit down. He doesn't say sit down, sit down. And I just have
sit
to say,
down.
I love that you still are saying sit down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all, thank you so much, guys. We're going to put links to all the things that they talked about today in our show notes. You will have access to that so that you can take a look at it for yourselves. Girls, anything I need to add before we wrap this up? Are we good?
I don't think so. We're just going to have a part 2. We'll come back and talk about, and maybe we can have Dr. Mark come too, and we can even talk about like peptides in general or whatever.
Because there are definitely alternatives that are safer, that work with your body, that are natural, no side effects, convenient, affordable, not injected. There are ways to support your body in addition, obviously, to using your muscle and eating right. Yes.
Yes. And don't fill big pharma's pockets.
Yes.
Amen. 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 Amen.
Yes.
Okay, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.
All right. Thank you.